Hey, hi all. Randy Roth here. So many are told that there's a rapture and a second coming, but they have now become household terms, and people believe that these terms are actually in Scripture. However, these terms are not in Scripture whatsoever. In fact, Paul calls the event the resurrection of the dead. So, why do we need to change the terminology? See, the scripture reference there is 1 Corinthians 15, verse 42, where Paul calls the event the resurrection of the dead, and he explains that the dead get their physical bodies back. They return with Christ, 1 Thessalonians 4:14, and they rise first. Well, how do they rise first if they're returning with him? Well, because Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 44, that we have a spiritual body and a physical body. And to be absent from the physical body is to be with the Lord in the spiritual body. And Paul calls these glorified bodies in Philippians 2:19 and 20, and these are glorified bodies of what you see in glory and what you have when you're in glory. And that's why they're called glorified bodies. At the return, people do not get their glorified bodies, as so often we're told, but they're changed from perishable to imperishable. That means that the body is no longer rot in the grave. That's corruptible. Jesus' body did not see corruption, Acts 2:31. See, it's not this, oh, well, then I cannot sin anymore type of body. No, it's a body that doesn't rot in the grave. That's what corruptible means. Perishable. Many versions use perishable because that's what it means. So Paul makes this segregation between the dead and the living. The dead get these incorruptible bodies, and those who are alive and remain are changed from immortal to immortal. Well, what's that mean? Adam was immortal, and then through sin, death entered into the world, as it says in Romans 5. See, he was created immortal. Now he's mortal. And so it's important to note that at the resurrection of the dead, all this change is on the physical body, not on the spiritual body that is returning with Christ for those who are dead, but on the physical body. The physical body is for a physical earth, and Paul notes that in verse 50, right before he says that I shew you a mystery, we will not all sleep. Well, what's the mystery he's showing? He's showing that those who are resurrected from the dead, verse 42, and who do not return to heaven with these flesh and blood bodies, verse 50, they are changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, from being corrupted, perishable, to non-perishable bodies. So often there's so much confusion on this because most people only quote from verse 51 on, ignoring the fact that the context starts in verse 12, and the actual name of the event is the resurrection of the dead. So the very terminology, rapture and second coming, are there made by man to divide the singular return of Christ, which is the resurrection of the dead. You see, Jesus returns in like manner as he left. He left the Mount of Olives to the sky, clouds, and then to heaven. So when he returns in like manner, he comes from heaven to the sky where the resurrection of the dead takes place. And then he goes to the Mount of Olives, as it says in Zechariah 14, verses 4 and 5, with all of his saints. So this is the sequence of events. There is no trip back to heaven for 7 years. There's no scripture whatsoever that even remotely suggests that. So I hope this is helpful. Take care. God bless.